Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole, and it's by user CheezItBitBoy. Am I the a-hole for being mad at my parents that they got my older brother a car for his 18th birthday and not mine, and then causing the whole family to be up in arms about it till they came through? Okay, I know the title sounds like I'm spoiled, but hear me out. My brother 20 got a car for his 18th birthday. Not a new car or anything, it was a 20-year-old Lexus that was in pretty good shape, and he rubbed it in my face for the rest of the time he was in his senior year of high school. Compared with my brother, I get just as good grades as he does. Better in some cases even. I worked my hardest in the hope of fairness. I even did some volunteering to clean up garbage in my local area. Then my 18th birthday came and went a few weeks ago, and the only thing I wanted, the only thing I was hoping for was a car. I wasn't expecting something like a new car or a sporty car, just something reliable like my brother got. The party wasn't anything like my brother's 18th. For his 18th, my mom baked a cake herself. It was a delicious layered chocolate pudding cake. I got a sheet cake from the supermarket. For his, they got a DJ. For mine, it was my dad's old boombox with a couple of mixed CDs. We went through the whole party and I figured my parents might have just been waiting to spring a surprise gift on me, but that didn't happen. I asked them as things were wrapping up why there was no car when my brother got one, and they said they felt like he'd worked harder for it. I asked what he did that I didn't do, because I did all of that and more. My grandma was nearby and heard everything, and then she asked them why as well. She ended up lecturing my parents that she was very disappointed in them for showing favoritism. Then she proceeded to announce to everyone still there that my parents thought it fine to get their firstborn son a car and DJ, but not their second. And then she even pointed out how much harder my parents tried for my brother's 18th birthday than they had for mine. My uncle was the first to stand up and say something, then everyone else who'd not left yet. I ended up just walking away and going to my room to sit and think. I got a few I'm sorry calls from relatives and my grandparents convinced me to go out with them for the evening. But when I got back, my parents were pissed and told me I'd shamed them to the whole family. I just walked past them because I didn't want to fight. The next few weeks went by with the silent treatment between us. But then, a few days ago, my parents suddenly surprised me with a white 98 Subaru Legacy that runs great. They practically threw the keys and the title in an envelope at me and said to have fun. I got the car, and they're paying for insurance for the next 6 months as they did for my brother. I know the car isn't really a right, but a privilege. So I feel like I've essentially blackmailed my parents into getting me one. Am I the a-hole for how all this played out? Well, this is easy. No, OP, of course you're not the a-hole. I mean, even your grandma and the rest of your family all called out your parents for playing favoritism. And then, after a week of giving you the silent treatment, what are they, 8? They buy you a car out of guilt or pressure or whatever and just throw it at you and told you to have fun? I actually feel sorry for you because it sounds like your parents don't like you. I mean, from the way you tell the story, it sounds like they have some sort of grudge against you or something like that. Like you did something to hurt them in the past, which I find very weird because you're just a kid. And now they're taking it out on you for some reason. I honestly don't get it. So OP, don't feel like you've blackmailed your parents because you didn't. They are a-holes and you are not. And what is your judgment? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see their judgments. CarryCat62 says, not the a-hole. You sound like a level-headed, responsible young man. Sorry you have to deal with that. Keep working hard in school, enjoy that car, and best of luck with your job hunt. You're a good kid and your parents should be very proud of you. It may not feel like it, but they are the ones missing out on a great son. Sounds like getting to go away for college and some distance from your folks will be a good thing. Not that it makes it right, but is your brother a kid that they had to worry about? It has struggled in school, has behavioral, emotional, or drug and drinking issues? Sometimes parents are just too relieved and exhausted that kid A manages to make it to 18 alive and graduated. They are too focused to see kid B, who's always been steady and responsible. Again, that doesn't make it fair at all, but if that's a component, it might give you a little insight into their actions. It's good to hear that your grandparents and other relatives have your back. Snoo Wavas 4531 says, I'm going to do with you're the a-hole because there is possibly something going on economically in your family that you are not privy to that meant the difference in parties and gifts. We are now 2 more years into a pandemic and everything is much more expensive, including used cars. It's possible they couldn't afford to get you a car or as nice of a party but didn't want to tell you so you didn't worry. You also acted a bit like a petulant 2-year-old. And Opie responds, the bill of sale for the car they got me was about $1,600, and when they got my brother his car and the DJ, that was in 2020, during the worst part of the pandemic. They also spent about twice as much on his Lexus. I know my parents aren't really struggling financially. Both of them have well-paying jobs that were not affected by the pandemic at all. The only thing I think could be the issue is they are paying a lot for my brother's college. I've never asked for tuition and plan to find work right after high school. I'm hoping to get a partial scholarship or something. My brother did, but it only covered so much, which is why my parents are paying the rest. Cranberry Glade says, not the a-hole. Seriously, parents of multiples don't do something for one child that you aren't willing to do for the others. If a financial crisis happens and you can't, that can be forgiven, but at least be decent enough to explain why, especially when they've worked just as hard for it. What I find most appalling in all of this is not that they didn't get you a car at first, but their treatment of you. They showed favoritism and they've driven a wedge between you and your brother, if the two of you were ever close to begin with. If you ever escaped that toxicity, I wouldn't blame you if you went no contact with them. Opie's edit. I would like to clarify a few things. When my brother and I were little, my parents treated us pretty evenly. It was kinda a slow transition that they started putting more focus on him. And from what other commenters have said, I'm not even sure they realized it until called out by the rest of the family. What really gets me though is that I really did try my best to be as good as my brother in school, if not better, and in many ways I did do better than him. My parents make pretty good money and also don't go out of their way to live lavishly by choice. They've always been moderate in everything they buy or do, though if anything is stretching their finances, it's my brother's college tuition. He got a partial scholarship and my parents are paying the rest. I don't and never intended to ask for the same treatment on that. I want to work and pay for my own student loans. Now that I have the car, I'm already looking into getting a part-time job. Actually, I was really hoping to get the car because I literally can't get a part-time job without one. We don't live in the city and we're 10 miles from the nearest public bus stop. I've always had to get rides to go anywhere. This also isn't a gender thing as I'm male like my brother. The bill of sale for the car I got says my parents paid $1,600 for it. My brother's car cost them about $3,000 plus if I remember. But I don't see it as a money issue. I actually love the Subaru and told my parents so. They did not share my enthusiasm. I also did try to talk about a car with my parents a few times last year, but they always dodged the conversation about the topic. I figured if I talked about it too much, I'd ruin it, and so I stopped. I would have felt like a brat to keep talking about getting an imaginary car, so I learned to just stay silent and hope. I did get some presents though, just nothing apart from the normal birthday stuff. I got mostly clothes from my parents, along with a video game, and I was thankful for them, and I got some other nice stuff from relatives. I didn't mention all of that because I didn't want the post to get too long because of the character limit. And other than the car and DJ, my brother did pretty much get more of everything on his 18th birthday, but me thinking about him getting more presents than me left me feeling petty and spoiled. The car was the only thing I was really hung up on. I can't go stay with my grandparents because they live in a one-bedroom condo. There isn't enough room for other people. After all their kids grew up, my grandparents decided to downsize to make their eventual retirement easier. Also, my grandparents know all of the details already, and they tell me that I didn't do anything wrong, and they were already planning on confronting my parents quietly over the car issue. But they took the chance to take care of the matter when they heard me asking my parents about it. And just to make it clear, When I went to talk to my parents after the party, it wasn't in front of the rest of the family. I intentionally spoke with them in another room and was supposed to be out of earshot of everyone else there. But my grandma eavesdropped and then barged in to start lecturing my parents about their actions, and that's what caused the crap storm to start. As for my brother's 18th birthday party, it was held in 2000 during basically the height of the pandemic. Honestly, we shouldn't have had a big party like that at the time, but my parents insisted. As for my brother himself, he barely speaks to me, even before he left for college. He didn't show up for my 18th birthday party, and I figured that's just because he's busy with college and he's not even in the same state as us anymore. Honestly, I haven't seen or heard from him since Christmas, and even then, the most I got out of him was a mild greeting. And finally, I did thank my parents for the car, enthusiastically thanked them even, but they've barely said a word to me after giving me the Subaru. And when I thanked my parents, they brushed me off and just went inside. It kind of gave off the vibe that they were letting a brat play with his new toy, which was pretty upsetting, and one of the reasons I made this post. Well, we got some mixed judgments, but the majority of the community goes for not the a-hole. So now, let's move on with the update, but of course, I'd like to remind you of my other playlists with more videos and stories that have updates, like this one. Now, let's move on. So now I can tell you all the rest of what happened before I start college. I'd like to start telling those who kept telling me to give the car back because they think I was either too spoiled and to accept life is unfair, or that I shouldn't take handouts, or I shouldn't accept gifts from crappy parents, etc. Please just stop. My inbox was so crammed full when I logged back on that it took some time to go through it all. Also, I made an edit to my original post where I clarify everything on that point. But in the end, it doesn't really matter anyway though. I did get a part-time job that later went full-time for the summer after I graduated. However, 3 weeks into working part-time, the Subaru blew the head gasket while on the highway at like 45 miles an hour, the temperature gauge redlined, and I had to pull over and call for help. My grandparents took a look at the car and found that someone had run a lot of gasket sealer in it and it was still in the coolant. The car was basically band-aided back together before my parents bought it and was then barely hanging on by a thread. It drove great and I was never pushing the car hard as I'm kinda a slow driver. My parents claimed no prior knowledge of the problem, but their only real reaction was to shrug and say it was karma for making them get me the car in the first place. Well, that was a mistake because my grandparents were right there to witness that and they tore into my parents like none other. My grandma told me to go wait in my room and let them sort this out. It was 2 hours before I was called back into the living room. My parents were on the couch and both looked like they'd both been metaphorically hit by a truck. My uncle and 2 other relatives were there now too. My grandparents had gotten it out of them that when they bought the car, they just looked for the cheapest thing they could find close in the area that still ran and bought it, no questions asked. They didn't even bother to inspect the car, let alone properly read the ad for it. My uncle, who knows a thing or two about cars, told me that the engine would basically need to be rebuilt because the head gasket warped the block, and it'd cost more than the car is worth to fix it. I had to call into work and tell them I was unable to make it in because my car was dead. They understood and basically put me on a sort of unpaid leave for the moment. Now, I want to point out that I had no involvement in what happened next. My grandparents just told me to chill for a while and let them and my parents take care of this. And they did. A few days later, they came back with a 1999 Honda Civic hatchback with 180,000 miles on it. It was white like my Subaru was and drives great. It's not all-wheel drive like the Subaru was, but it's great on the road and gets better gas mileage. There was also a list of all recent repairs done to the car, things like a new radiator and stuff. My uncle also went over the car before giving it the okay. I thanked everyone profusely. My parents, though, had all the elation of Ben Stein on Valium. They said very little and just walked away. There wasn't even that vibe that they had last time of acting like they were giving a new toy to a brat. If I could put it into words, the way they acted was just pure defeat. The Subaru got resold later for $400 since that was the best we could get for it with the blown head gasket, and that money was put into my savings. That's only one half of what happened though. You see, when I said I did better in school than my brother, I wasn't kidding. My brother got a 30% scholarship after he finished high school. Well, I got a 50% one. Not at the same college, of course, but at one comparably good that was also closer to home. To say my parents were shocked is an understatement. Of course, they just both looked unhappy as soon as the shock wore off. I decided it wouldn't be a good idea to poke the bear by asking them about it, but my grandma thought otherwise and poked that bear. And I mean really poked it. First, she asked if my parents were happy for me, and they claimed they were, but really didn't show in their attitudes. So my grandparents finally asked what their problem was. Why do they dislike me? Their second son was doing great and even went above expectations, and they can't be happy about it? Did they want me to fail? Were they hoping I'd fail? What is the deal? My mother looked really upset, and my father couldn't look me in the eyes. They both meekly said they were happy for me and managed to say they want me to take the world by storm when I go to college, and even said they'll help pay some of my tuition as well, just like they are for my brother. My grandparents both sharply said that they better keep their word because there should never have been any favoritism, period. I thanked my parents for their help, got a light if not limp handshake from my father, and a very stiff hug from my mother. It all felt so forced. I was and still am extremely thankful for the car and the tuition, but my parents just drained the room of all emotion. I ended up asking if my grandparents knew what it was that made my parents act this way. I asked if I had been an accidental pregnancy or something, and they gave me the "it's time we told you" look. Well, I'm not adopted, as so many asked, but I was unplanned, sort of. You see, my parents wanted both a girl and a boy, but got 2 boys instead. My brother came out as a boy, so my parents were really hoping to get a girl on the next go, and they had a prior agreement to stop after 2 kids. They never got a girl. My grandma told me they refused to find out my gender till after I was born. They were convinced I'd be born female, and they bought a lot of baby stuff for a girl, and they didn't get a girl. My grandma said I ended up using all of my brother's hand-me-downs till I was 3 years old because my parents had bought so much girl stuff in advance that they couldn't use. So I was just a disappointment to them from the time I was born. My grandparents said that they know my parents are screwed up, but they've been the way they are for so long now that there's no point in expecting them to change. Since then, my parents hadn't spoken to me much about college. In fact, they ignore the subject as much as they can. And thanks to some of the warnings I got from people who messaged me making me paranoid, I called the college I've been accepted to and made sure to tell them that if anyone calls or emails pretending to be me, or my parents called trying to say I'm not coming, then to call me for a double or even triple check if anything like that happens. I mean, I kinda doubt my parents would do that sort of thing, especially after everything that's happened, but I felt like playing it safe was the better option. Though there was something that I really didn't expect to happen, and that was my brother calling me. He called me out of the blue to talk. He said our grandparents called and told him everything. He told me he was sorry for what happened in his own way, and he hopes that once I'm on my own, I won't need to ever come back. He actually admitted to me that when he finishes college, he's going to stay in the state he's in because he likes it there. Our parents, I do know actually, really want him to come back when he gets his degree, but it looks like that's not happening. I said I don't blame him, and I may do the same. The rest of the conversation was a bit awkward because we aren't really used to speaking to each other much anymore. My grandparents and the rest of the family held a surprise party for me over the weekend, and they made it almost like a repeat of my brother's 18th birthday. There was a DJ and a big chocolate cake my grandma made. I couldn't thank them all enough. My parents attended the party, but they were like wallflowers the entire time. They didn't say or do much, just stayed sitting at a far table in the corner and drank beer quietly. The look of defeat they had was even greater now. I think the party wasn't just to congratulate me, but to also rub in my parents' faces that they should have done better, because the rest of the family have made their disappointment in them clear. They seemed like they wanted to leave the party for a while. Can't say I blamed them, they were being humiliated into staying where they were. My grandma said that you're never too old to be taught a lesson in humility. As for my personal life, my part-time job went to full-time after high school, and I've been working hard to build my savings before I leave for college. I made minimum wage, but a job is a job, and I want to leave it with my best effort put in before my 2 weeks notice is up. I doubt I'm going to be coming back here to make another update, and after my first post, I'm just so tired of all of the negative comments. About 95% of the comments on my original post were positive, and I want to thank all of those who had nice things to say. You people rock. But the negative comments were so bad that I found them to be mentally draining. Some of the people who commented with such negativity honestly feel like they've got worse issues than me. Lots of projecting maybe. If anyone had something harsh but constructive to say, that was fine. But some people just raged at me like they were foaming at the mouth. I really don't want more of that. Well, OP, that solves the mystery. Your parents aren't just a-holes, they're also moronic idiots. I mean, honestly, who blames a baby for being born the way they're born? I mean, they were disappointed in you? Come on, they are a disappointment to the human race. What the hell? Anyways, thank you so much for sharing your story, OP. Take care and all the best in college. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.